The arrogant defense attorneys thought they were facing another inexperienced prosecutor when everything went wrong. The stunning blonde DA they'd been mocking for her youth and beauty had just systematically destroyed their case, exposed their illegal tactics, and triggered a bar investigation that would end all their careers. What they didn't know was that the gorgeous young woman they dismissed as naive was actually Victoria Viper Cross, and her perfect 47-0 prosecution record was about to become 48-0 while ending their legal careers forever. Welcome to Silent Heroes Stories. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where in the world are you watching from today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button. Now let me tell you how we got to this moment. The law firm of Blackstone, Morrison & Associates had built their reputation on one simple principle. No case was too difficult to win if you were willing to bend the rules far enough. For 15 years, they had specialized in defending the worst criminals money could buy. Murderers, organized crime figures, corrupt politicians, anyone who could afford their astronomical fees and didn't ask too many questions about their methods. The firm's success rate was legendary in legal circles, but what most people didn't know was that their victories came not from superior legal skill, but from a sophisticated network of bribed witnesses, intimidated prosecutors, and corrupted evidence that had turned criminal defense into organized crime itself. Senior partner Richard Blackstone had perfected the art of destroying young prosecutors. His strategy was simple but effective. Identify the weak points in their cases, exploit their inexperience, and use his 30 years of courtroom dominance to break their confidence and their careers. He particularly enjoyed facing female prosecutors, whom he could dismiss with a combination of condescension and subtle intimidation that had driven dozens of talented attorneys out of criminal law, which is why he was looking forward to the Morrison murder trial with unusual anticipation. The case was high profile, a wealthy businessman accused of killing his wife for insurance money, and the evidence against his client was substantial enough that victory would require all of his most sophisticated tactics. But what made Blackstone truly excited was his opponent, District Attorney Victoria Cross, a 29-year-old prosecutor who looked more like a fashion model than a criminal attorney. With platinum blonde hair that belonged in shampoo commercials and blue eyes that seemed too innocent for the brutal world of murder trials, she appeared to be exactly the kind of the naive young prosecutor that Blackstone loved to destroy. "Gentlemen," Blackstone said to his team during their pre-trial strategy meeting, "we're facing a prosecutor who got her job through political connections rather than legal competence. Victoria Cross is young, inexperienced, and clearly more concerned with her appearance than her case preparation." His associate, James Morrison, nodded with the confidence of someone who had helped destroy many young prosecutors' careers. "I've reviewed her record. She's only been DA for 8 months, and most of her cases have been plea bargains or minor felonies. She's never handled anything close to this level of complexity." What neither Blackstone nor Morrison knew was that Victoria Cross's appointment as district attorney hadn't been political favoritism. It had been a calculated decision by the governor to place the most lethal prosecutor in the state in a position where she could do maximum damage to criminal organizations like theirs. Victoria's record before becoming DA was something that Blackstone's private investigators had somehow failed to uncover. As a federal prosecutor, she had maintained a perfect conviction rate in organized crime cases, earning the nickname Viper from defense attorneys who had learned to fear her methodical approach to case preparation and her absolute refusal to accept anything less than complete victory. The morning of the Morrison trial began with Blackstone's team arriving at the courthouse with the confidence of gladiators entering an arena where they had never tasted defeat. The media attention was intense. Morrison was a prominent businessman whose alleged murder of his socialite wife had captivated the public imagination. Victoria Cross arrived at the courthouse alone, carrying a single briefcase and wearing a navy blue suit that emphasized both her professional competence and her stunning beauty. To the assembled media and legal observers, she looked like a young attorney who was clearly in over her head facing one of the most feared defense teams in the state. "Miss Cross," Blackstone said with paternal condescension as they met outside the courtroom, "I hope you're prepared for what's going to happen in there. Murder trials aren't like the traffic cases you're used to handling." Victoria looked up at the man who had built his career on the destruction of young prosecutors, her blue eyes showing no trace of the nervousness he expected to see. "Thank you for your concern, Mr. Blackstone. I'm sure it will be educational." Her calm response irritated Blackstone, who was accustomed to seeing fear in the eyes of prosecutors facing him for the first time. But he attributed her composure to naive confidence that would crumble once the trial began. "Don't take it personally when this is over," Blackstone added with false sympathy. "Everyone loses their first big case. The important thing is learning from the experience." What Blackstone didn't understand was that Victoria had already learned everything she needed to know about him and his methods. For 3 months she had been studying his previous cases, analyzing his tactics, and preparing for this confrontation with the thoroughness that had earned her the perfect conviction record that nobody in his firm had bothered to investigate. The courtroom was packed with spectators, media representatives, and legal observers who had come to witness what most expected would be a massacre of an inexperienced prosecutor by one of the most ruthless defense teams in the country. Judge Patricia Williams called the court to order with the authority of someone who had presided over hundreds of murder trials. She was known for running a fair but strict courtroom, and she had little patience for the kind of theatrical antics that some attorneys used to distract from weak cases. "Ladies and gentlemen," Judge Williams announced, "we are here for the trial of People v. Morrison. Mr. Morrison is charged with first-degree murder in the death of his wife, Catherine Morrison. Are both sides ready to proceed?" "The defense is ready, Your Honor," Blackstone replied, with the confidence of someone who had never doubted the outcome of a trial. "The prosecution is ready, Your Honor," Victoria said, her voice carrying clearly through the courtroom despite her apparent youth. The jury selection process revealed the first hint that this trial might not proceed as Blackstone expected. Victoria's questions to potential jurors demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of jury psychology and legal strategy that suggested far more experience than her age would indicate. "Mr. Henderson," Victoria asked one potential juror, "do you believe that wealthy individuals should be held to the same legal standards as everyone else?" "Of course," the juror replied. "And if the evidence showed that someone used their wealth and connections to try to escape justice, would that influence your ability to render a fair verdict?" Blackstone objected to the question as prejudicial, but Judge Williams allowed it, recognizing that Victoria was laying important groundwork for her case. The young prosecutor was demonstrating a level of strategic thinking that experienced attorneys would respect. During opening statements, Blackstone delivered his usual performance, passionate, convincing, and designed to make the prosecution look incompetent, while painting his client as a victim of prosecutorial overreach. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Blackstone began, "you're going to hear a lot of speculation and circumstantial evidence from the prosecution today. The district attorney is going to try to convince you that my client, Thomas Morrison, committed murder based on theories and assumptions rather than facts." He gestured toward Victoria with the dismissive wave he used for prosecutors he considered beneath his notice. "Ms. Cross is young, eager, and determined to make a name for herself in this high-profile case. But enthusiasm isn't evidence, and ambition isn't proof of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt." The opening was masterful in its manipulation, suggesting that Victoria's youth and presumed inexperience made her untrustworthy, while positioning Morrison as the victim of an overzealous prosecutor seeking career advancement. Victoria rose for her opening statement with movements that were graceful but carried an underlying sense of controlled power. As she walked to face the jury, something in her bearing suggested that the defense team might have seriously miscalculated their opponent. "Members of the jury," Victoria began, her voice carrying the kind of authority that made everyone in the courtroom pay attention. "Over the next several days, you're going to hear evidence that Thomas Morrison planned and executed the murder of his wife, Catherine, with the same cold calculation he brought to every other aspect of his business career." She paused, letting her words settle over the silent courtroom. "You're going to see financial records showing that Mr. Morrison was facing bankruptcy and that his wife's life insurance policy was his only way to avoid financial ruin. You're going to hear testimony from witnesses who will describe his attempts to establish alibis and manipulate evidence." Victoria's opening was precise, confident, and delivered with a level of professional competence that made Blackstone shift uncomfortably in his chair. This was not the nervous performance he had expected from an inexperienced prosecutor. "Most importantly," Victoria continued, "you're going to see evidence that Mr. Morrison's defense team has attempted to obstruct this investigation through witness intimidation and evidence tampering, crimes that demonstrate their client's guilt as clearly as any murder weapon." The accusation hit the courtroom like a thunderbolt. Victoria had just accused Blackstone's firm of criminal activity in front of the jury, the media, and the judge. It was either a devastating strategic move or a career-ending mistake. Blackstone shot to his feet. "Objection! These accusations are completely unfounded and prejudicial." "Your Honor," Victoria replied calmly, "the prosecution will present evidence supporting these allegations as part of our case. Mr. Blackstone's firm is welcome to refute that evidence during their defense." Judge Williams considered for a moment, clearly recognizing that the trial had taken an unexpected turn. "I'll allow it, but Ms. Cross, you better be prepared to back up these serious allegations with concrete evidence." "I am, Your Honor," Victoria replied with quiet confidence that sent a chill through Blackstone's team. The prosecution's case began with financial experts who methodically destroyed Morrison's claims of financial stability. Victoria's questioning was surgical in its precision, revealing a level of preparation and legal skill that shocked everyone who had expected to see an inexperienced prosecutor stumble through her first major case. "Mr. Patterson," Victoria asked the forensic accountant, "what was Mr. Morrison's net worth at the time of his wife's death?" "Negative $2.3 million, Patterson replied. "He was facing immediate bankruptcy and the loss of his business." "And what was the value of Mrs. Morrison's life insurance policy?" $5 million, with Mr. Morrison as the sole beneficiary. Victoria's examination continued with mathematical precision, building a financial motive so clear and compelling that Morrison's guilt seemed inevitable. But it was her cross-examination of the defense's witnesses that revealed the true extent of her capabilities. When Blackstone called Morrison's business partner to provide an alibi, Victoria's cross-examination systematically destroyed not just the witness's credibility, but exposed the illegal tactics Blackstone had used to secure his testimony. "Mr. Davis," Victoria said to the witness, "you testified that Mr. Morrison was with you at a business dinner on the night of the murder. Is that correct?" "Yes, that's right." "And you're certain of the date?" "Absolutely." Victoria approached the witness stand with documents that made Davis visibly nervous. "Mr. Davis, I'm showing you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 47. Can you identify this document?" Davis looked at the paper and his face went pale. I'm not sure what this is." "It's a credit card receipt from a restaurant in Las Vegas, showing that you were gambling there on the night you claimed to have been having dinner with Mr. Morrison in Los Angeles. Would you like to explain how you managed to be in two cities simultaneously?" The courtroom erupted in whispers. Blackstone was on his feet with objections, but the damage was done. Victoria had just exposed perjury and demonstrated that the defense was using false testimony. But Victoria wasn't finished. "Mr. Davis, did anyone from Mr. Blackstone's firm offer you any compensation for your testimony in this case?" I invoke my Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination." The answer confirmed what Victoria had just proved. Blackstone's firm was not just defending a murderer. They were actively suborning perjury and bribing witnesses. During the lunch recess, Blackstone confronted Victoria in the courthouse hallway, his usual composure cracking under the pressure of watching his case and his reputation crumble in real time. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded, his voice barely controlled. "You're not some inexperienced prosecutor. Nobody develops cross-examination skills like that in 8 months." Victoria looked at the man who had built his career on intimidating younger attorneys, her blue eyes showing no trace of the fear he was used to inspiring. "Mr. Blackstone, I think you should focus on preparing your client for the inevitable verdict rather than questioning my qualifications." "This isn't over," Blackstone warned, using the tone that had successfully intimidated dozens of prosecutors over the years. "You're absolutely right," Victoria replied with a smile that should have warned him he was making a terrible mistake. "It's not over, but it's about to be." That afternoon, Victoria called her surprise witness, FBI Special Agent Maria Santos, whose testimony would not only seal Morrison's conviction, but destroy Blackstone's career forever. "Agent Santos," Victoria said, "can you tell the court about the federal investigation into witness tampering and obstruction of justice related to this case?" Blackstone was on his feet immediately. "Objection. This has nothing to do with the murder charges." "Your Honor," Victoria replied, "it has everything to do with this case. The defense's pattern of illegal activity demonstrates consciousness of guilt and provides additional evidence of Mr. Morrison's culpability." Judge Williams was clearly intrigued by the direction the case was taking. "I'll allow it. Agent Santos, please answer the question." "For the past 6 months," Agent Santos testified, "the FBI has been investigating reports of witness intimidation, evidence tampering, and bribery of court officials connected to cases handled by Blackstone, Morrison, and Associates." The revelations sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Victoria had not just been prosecuting a murder case. She had been coordinating with federal agents to expose the criminal organization that had been masquerading as a law firm. "Agent Santos," Victoria continued, "did your investigation uncover evidence of crimes committed in connection with people vis Morrison?" "Yes. We have recorded conversations, financial records, and testimony from witnesses who were approached by representatives of the defendant's law firm and offered money to lie under oath." Victoria turned to face Blackstone, her expression showing the kind of cold satisfaction that had earned her the nickname Viper among defense attorneys who had learned to fear her methodical approach to destroying criminal enterprises. "Agent Santos, is the defendant's law firm currently under federal investigation for racketeering?" "Yes, they are." The courtroom was in chaos. Media representatives were frantically taking notes. Legal observers were staring in amazement, and Morrison was looking at his legal team with the dawning realization that they had made his situation infinitely worse. But Victoria still wasn't finished. She had one more revelation that would complete the destruction of everyone who had underestimated her. "Your Honor," Victoria said, "I'd like the court to know something about my background that seems to have been overlooked by the defense team." She walked to her table and retrieved a folder that she handed to Judge Williams. "This is my complete prosecutorial record from my previous position as a federal prosecutor with the Organized Crime Strike Force. Furthermore," Victoria continued, "I should mention that my colleagues in federal law enforcement have a nickname for me, Viper. It refers to my approach to prosecuting criminal organizations that believe they're above the law." She turned to look directly at Blackstone, her blue eyes showing the predatory focus that had made her legendary among prosecutors. "I accepted the position of district attorney specifically because I wanted to clean up the corruption that has plagued this jurisdiction for too long. This case represents the beginning of that process." Morrison was convicted in less than 2 hours of jury deliberation. But more importantly for Victoria's long-term goals, the FBI investigation she had coordinated resulted in federal racketeering charges against Blackstone, Morrison, and every senior member of their firm. Blackstone's career ended not with a dramatic courtroom collapse, but with federal agents placing him in handcuffs while photographers captured the moment when the attorney who had destroyed so many young prosecutors was finally brought to justice by someone whose perfect record he had never bothered to investigate. The beautiful young prosecutor he had dismissed as inexperienced had systematically destroyed his criminal enterprise while securing another conviction for her perfect record. And Thomas Morrison's life sentence was just collateral damage in Victoria Viper Cross's war against legal corruption. What they didn't know about District Attorney Victoria Cross could have filled multiple federal case files. But what everyone learned that day was that assuming inexperience based on youth and beauty was not just wrong, it was career suicide. The gorgeous young prosecutor they had dismissed as naive had reminded everyone that some people earn their reputations not through connections or politics, but through the kind of methodical excellence that destroys anyone foolish enough to underestimate them. The stunning blonde they thought they could intimidate had just added another victory to a perfect record that would never be broken, while ending the careers of everyone arrogant enough to believe that beauty and youth were signs of weakness rather than camouflage for lethal competence.